Welcome back to the Creatively Curious podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Walter. As some of you may have noticed, I've taken a bit of a hiatus from the podcast, which was supposed to be for the summer, so July and August of this year, 2025. And you may notice that the month now is November. So my hiatus was a little bit longer than I had initially planned for. And I guess the whole reason for that is that we ended up moving across the country. So I live in Canada. I was living in Edmonton, and now we have moved to Halifax, Nova Scotia, which was a big, big move for us. And actually it was something that we didn't know was going to happen when I finished my last episodes in June. So it happened pretty quickly, and I wouldn't say out of the blue, because my husband and I were open to moving someplace different, and we had kind of discussed a few different places, and he was putting out feelers for getting a job in a different company. And this opportunity came up here, and so we thought, let's just do it. We're both basically from Edmonton, and I've lived in other places, but always temporarily. And there's a difference in that when you know that you're going to be going back home. So we picked up our family, we packed a U-Haul. My husband drove it across the country. I flew out with the kids, and we've been here since the end of August. And I actually was not prepared for, which I'm a life coach, and I've had a number of pretty substantial changes. I wasn't really prepared with how I would feel after that move happened. And I was here with the kids for about 5 days before my husband arrived, and so we were downtown doing touristy things, so that was nice. And then we ended up buying a house that we hadn't even walked through, which I probably would not recommend doing that again. There were some issues here in this house, but basically the change has been harder than I thought it would be. And so today I'm going to talk about the change cycle. And so this is something that I learned about in my life coach training with Beck. And she likens the change cycle to a caterpillar becoming a butterfly. And so there are 4 stages of the change cycle. Square one is called she calls it death and rebirth. And usually that comes about from a catalytic event. So it's something that happens to you or something that you choose. So in this instance with the move, it's something that we chose to do. And I guess when you choose to do something and you think, oh, you're excited about it and all of that, I think that's why we get a little bit taken off guard when so much grief can happen, or so much grief surfaces. And it's something sort of societally, culturally, we don't talk about. So if someone dies, someone passes away, obviously we think, okay, you're going to be sad, you're going to be upset. It's when things occur, changes occur to us, for us, things that we choose, that we also feel that grief and like that death that society isn't good at supporting us through. So another example of that would be having a baby. So when I had my first, and maybe that's when it's the strongest, because you go from no kids to having this life form that you're responsible for. I had a huge response to that. That I wasn't prepared for. I had never heard anyone speaking about that, how you would grieve, I guess, the loss of your life previous to that. And then just how demanding caring for for a baby is. So there's another example of a catalytic event that I feel like society doesn't really support us in, and where life coaching and probably therapy is definitely good at supporting us in that. So the change cycle has 4 squares. Death and rebirth is the first square, and that's when the caterpillar goes into the chrysalis and basically just melts right down. I'll just go into kind of an overview of the change cycle. So square 2 would be dreaming and scheming. And so that's when the caterpillar is becoming the butterfly in the chrysalis. Square 3 is the hero saga. And that's when the butterfly is struggling to come out of the chrysalis. And the more it struggles, the stronger it becomes. And then square 4 is the promised land. So that's when things are working pretty well in your life. Things are going fairly smoothly. And, you know, you've kind of made it. Which I laugh about because, you know, our world changes so frequently and so quickly that pretty much you can find yourself in square 1 again at some point, not too far in the future. So today's episode, I'm just going to concentrate on square 1 of the change cycle, the death and rebirth. But basically, I feel like our culture, our society thinks of growth on basically like a straight line upwards. So if you're growing, then it all goes well and you go straight up and it's a line and that's how it's supposed to be. But Martha Beck talks about change being like the seasons. So you'd have summer, fall, winter, spring, and that's more of a kind of holistic idea of looking at change, and that over time we would be going through those different cycles again and again. And so when you kind of combine those two ideas of change, then you have like a spiral. And I spoke about that, I believe it was in episode 25, where I was talking about the Creative Visionary Program, and Nick Wilton talks about the creative path that way, so that it's like you are moving upwards, but it's a spiral upwards. And so it's not a linear path. It's not, you know, a trajectory that just goes straight up, that you're going through these change cycles, you're going through the seasons over and over, and then you are moving upwards or forwards, however you want to look at it, but it's not linear. So I like that idea of looking at change, and then just even remembering that we'll be going through these cycles over and over again in our lifetimes is kind of comforting. I will admit that with this change, I was pretty shocked at like the extent of my grief. So luckily I have a coach. I work with a coach who can remind me, like, I'm back to square one. And we say that like, oh, back to square one, like it's sort of a negative, but it's not a negative. It means that I'm growing, and I could stay where I was. I could live there forever and it would be comfortable and cozy. But actually that's an example, I think, too, of square 4, of being in square 4, where you are really comfortable with a place that you're living, and it is comfortable. It's cozy. We know where to go. We know where the good restaurants are. We have family there. You know, I like the ravine. I was close to the ravine, all of those things. And maybe there's something else. There's something else to discover. There's something else to explore. There's something else to experience, and that would be living somewhere else. So that was our intention. And so with the square one, And it being called a death and rebirth, and the, caterpillar going into the chrysalis and basically just completely melting down in there. With a death, we go through a lot of emotions. There's all of the emotions like denial, bargaining, sadness, anger, till we finally get to acceptance. And it's not like, again, it's not a linear move through those feelings. It's just all in there. They're all coming out probably all at once, all together. And how can we be compassionate with ourselves when we're having all of those feelings? And for me, it has been helpful to have a coach to kind of work through that with me. And especially because some of the comments, what are some of the comments that I have received? People just, I think ultimately people, not all people, a lot of people are uncomfortable with somebody else's discomfort. I see that a lot with kids too. So, when the kid is melting down, let's be compassionate for that. And so for me, I have felt sad. I have felt really sad, and I kind of miss things about where I came from, and that's okay. And the mantra for this stage in the change cycle is, I don't know what the heck, I'll say heck, is going on, and that's okay. And I was going to say some of the things. Oh, you can do hard things, which we all know. Thanks. Was that Dr. Becky? And also somebody else, I think, says that. I know this. I know I can do hard things. I don't need to be told that. I need people who can say, yeah, that's a hard move, and it makes sense that you're feeling sad. And for any of the change that we go through like that, there's going to be a lot of grief, a lot of sadness, some anger, all of those things. And I don't think you need to be a professional or a life coach or somebody trained to sit with that. I think we need to be okay with those feelings in ourselves, and then recognize that other people are going to have those feelings, and that's okay. And it makes sense that even though they chose it, that they can still have all those feelings. And it's not like I can't see any of the good that is here around me. I can see that clearly, but I also need to allow space for the other feelings, because it's not like there's good and bad feelings. They're all, in my opinion, just feelings. So then caring for oneself. I'm doing a lot of journaling, which is helpful. A lot of baths. There's one positive. I have a nice big soaker bath again, which is nice. There's lots of things to support oneself. I'm sure you don't need a list of that, but it's just to be mindful that all of those feelings will be present, and to allow those feelings space. I think I've mentioned this before on the podcast. Is one thing I do is, if I am feeling like strong sadness or anger, then I write to that feeling, similar to Liz Gilbert does when she writes to love or writes to God, is I'll write to that feeling. And then I, from that feeling, will respond and give that feeling a voice. It's kind of like similar to parts work, internal family systems parts work, where you give those parts a voice. So, and then I'll journal from that space. And I find that really helpful, because then I'm allowing it to be and accepting it. And that seems to be helpful. Let's see. Oh, so part of this change cycle is allowing these feelings. These changes can feel painful, where life coaching has been valuable or is valuable is when we assign stories to some of the things that have happened to us that end up creating and supporting our pain, where perhaps pain doesn't need to be. So I'm going to try to think of a good example of that. Like, it could be like, I always feel sad, or why I'm not good at these big changes. I'm not good at, this big change that we did. Well, is that true? So part of it is like questioning those thoughts that could be like sort of adding to our pain, that isn't really supportive. It's not helpful. So is that true that I'm not good at this, or I'm always sad? No. And then finding the evidence for that. So it's kind of twofold. It's like allowing the space for these feelings to be present, because, something major has happened. I've moved across the country, and then supporting myself in that, and then just ensuring that I'm not adding to my pain by, creating thoughts and beliefs that are not helpful to me. Let's see. Basically, in the square one, you've lost who you were, and so there'll be lots of feelings. And then the caterpillar is just melting on down in its chrysalis. And interestingly, there are these cells called imago cells that are inside the caterpillar that then they hold the DNA for the butterfly. So once the caterpillar is its soupy mess inside, which has happened to me, then the imago cells start to create a butterfly, and that's when they start growing. And then you'd move into square two, where inside that chrysalis, the butterfly is being created and growing. And then that's the dreaming and scheming phase of the change cycle. So I think I'll leave that for another episode, because I have a lot more to say about the dreaming and scheming. And all of these in the square one and square two, these things are internal moves. So not things that anyone necessarily can see on the outside of our life. I mean, with the exception of, yes, I have moved across the country, but all my feelings, all of my questioning of my beliefs, all of my dreaming can happen basically internally, on my pages where I'm thinking about things. I haven't made any major moves outside to, with my clothes or what I'm doing to kind of solidify how I'm feeling inside. And then square three and square four are more external moves that we make that other people can see. So I'll leave a link to an image of the change cycle that Martha Beck uses. I feel like it's really good. It's a good image, good visual of how to think about the change cycle. And I just love the analogy of, becoming a butterfly, kind of going through things that are hard, and then you come out as something totally different. And, we can go through that change cycle over and over and over and over again in our lifetimes. The caterpillar can only do it once. So aren't we lucky? So hopefully that helps you if you have had any change that has happened to you, or that you've chosen to do, that you kind of understand why you might be having grief, sadness, anger, all of those things, even though it's something that you chose to do. It's totally normal. It's completely valid that you would be feeling all of that. And, support yourself in any way that feels comfortable and good to you. And just know that it will pass. It does pass. But I think that it takes longer if you don't allow it. And then also, don't share if you don't have people around you who can be supportive of those feelings. I would say don't share it. Some people aren't safe people. find yourself safe people, a good coach, a good therapist, any friend who you know would be supportive of those feelings, and seek out some support from those people. But you do have to sometimes be mindful about who you share things with. So hopefully you're surrounded with people who would support you and you have some good strategies. I'll leave the link to the image, and if you have any questions, please let me know, and I'll see you again.